I completed the Generation 2 National Pokedex with just one game, one console, and an Arduino. I have been a huge fan of the Pokemon games ever since I was a kid. My first game was Pokemon Diamond, and I put a lot of hours into that game. I still remember the first time I beat the Elite Four and Cynthia in my friend's basement. Despite thoroughly enjoying the franchise, I was never able to complete the Pokedex, and that bothers me to this day. The version exclusives, starters, and mythicals make, quote, catching them all rather complicated and expensive. The only time I completed the Pokedex was when I borrowed a friend's action replay and input the national dex code. Talk about lame.
Now that I'm an adult with like a job and stuff, I can buy all the games and devices to complete the Pokedex on my own. However, the cost to get all the equipment these days is ridiculous. You need a second device along with all of the necessary games. For example, to complete the Gen 2 Pokedex, you would need Pokemon Red or Blue, which you would have to play through twice partially to get both fossil Pokemon, Pokemon Gold, Pokemon Silver, and two devices like the Game Boy Color and or the Game Boy Advance. That would cost you around $280. But Gen 3 gets even more insane.
The minimum number of games would be Leaf Green, Emerald, which would be 2 full playthroughs, Colosseum, and XD, plus you need to get a GameCube as well. This would cost you a whopping $645. So I presented the problem. I want to complete the Pokedex in various Pokemon generations, which I wasn't able to do as a kid. I want to complete them as legitimately as possible without breaking the bank. This leads us to a new problem. How do you get specific Pokemon that are not natively available to the game without hacking? The answer is the same way they wanted you to obtain them in the first place, through trading. We need a device that can replicate a second console in the trading environment. I was inspired to do this when I saw a video by Gopier where he completed a trade between generations 2 and 3. As many of you probably already know, this was not made possible by the Pokemon developers. Gopier has solved many unique Pokemon problems and has some great videos, so please go check him out. I have a link to his channel in the description. Now let's take a look at my setup. For the legitimate equipment, I used Pokemon Silver and a Game Boy Advance SP. The main reason I started with Gen 2 is I only have a copy of Pokemon Silver, and I don't have Pokemon Gold. So the only way I could complete the Pokedex is with a trading device. The microcontroller I used is an Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi. You can use any Arduino model that has SPI capabilities. I bought the Wi-Fi version because I'm hoping to get into the Gen 4 local trading rooms in the future. I used a Game Boy Color cord, a GBA port, which is the same as the Game Boy Color essentially, 3 1 kilo ohm resistors, and a few jumper wires. The same hardware would work for Generation 1, but the Arduino code would need some tweaking. There's a great body of work for both Generations 1 and 2 that maps the trading protocol. Shout out to Pepehin Devos, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, who I adapted my code from mostly, but I included other links in the description. I won't go into the code details in this video, but I can create another video about the trading protocol and my adaptations if there is interest. Within the trading protocol is a specific section of code for the party Pokemon to be traded into the legitimate game. For Pokemon Silver, 17 Pokemon need to be traded in, which are not available in the game, plus you have to make trade evolutions. To choose the party Pokemon, I built a Python code, which is in the GitHub link below, along with the Arduino code. The Pokemon Builder code takes inputs of the Pokemon species, level, and moves, and the output is a hexadecimal code that the Silver cartridge can understand. Currently, the IVs and therefore stats are randomly generated, as the point is to complete the Generation 2 Pokedex with only one cartridge. I did finish a custom mode where I was able to send over a shiny Umbreon and shiny Celebi as well, just for funsies. Now that I've described the device and code, I will talk specifically how I completed the Generation 2 Pokedex. If the item or Pokemon was available in the game legitimately, that's how I got it, including Moonstones, which are only available on Monday nights, Sunstones, which are won at the bug catching contest first place, Metal Coats, which are on Magnemite at 2%, and King's Rock, which are on Wild Slowpoke at 2% as well. I legitimately caught the legendary dogs, along with Ho-Oh and Lugia. I caught 2 1% Chanseys, one to evolve into Blissey, and one to trade for Aerodactyl via an in-game trade. I also accidentally fainted 2 Chanseys. I don't want to talk about it. For the starters, I chose Cyndaquil and traded in Totodile and Chikorita at the beginning of the game so I could use them in my playthrough. For trade evolutions, I used Alakazam and Machamp in my playthrough. I also got Gengar about midway through to help catch the legendary dogs with Meanlook, Hypnosis, and Nightshade. The remaining trade evolutions are Golem, Steelix, Scizor, Slowking, Politoed, Porygon 2, and Kingdra. Golem is the only one that's a trade only, the rest need items for the trade evolutions. I did have an issue with my device for Politoed, so I had to resurrect a lost King's Rock, but I did get the second King's Rock legitimate before I lost it in my trading device. The remaining Pokemon are the version exclusives, which include Mankey, Growlithe, Spinarak, Gligar, Teddiursa, and Mantine. And then the unobtainable Pokemon. For Mythicals, we have Mew, Mewtwo, and Celebi. The Generation 1 legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. The Generation 1 starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, and finally the fossil Pokemon, which are Kabuto and Ammonite. One thing that's annoying about Gen 2 is the evolutionary stones. You can only obtain one Thunder, Fire, Leaf, and Water stone naturally in the game. Therefore, I had to trade in the remaining stones with the unobtainable Pokemon I mentioned before. And that's it. I completed the Pokedex in Generation 2 with only one game, one console, and an Arduino. Here's an edited video of the trading process. Throughout this process, there were many bugs and problems. The first was when the Arduino party had multiple Pokemon. The Pokemon would show up with random stats, items, moves, and most of it was gibberish. I finally was able to solve this problem just a few weeks ago. The second problem was I accidentally sent the wrong Pokemon data to the Arduino, which is how I lost one of my trade evolution items for Politoed. The final problem, which made me the most mad, was getting into the trade room because of the Arduino speed limit. The communication protocol calls for a certain baud rate. I used it, and the Arduino cannot output data at that limit. Frustrating. I had a lot of fun working on this project, and it took me a long time. Some of the future work items I have are Generation 1 code updates, Generation 3 trading, combining Generation 1 through 3 into a single device or code, trading between Generations 2 and 3 like Gopier did, and getting into the Generation 4 and 5 trading rooms via the local Wi-Fi. If any of these new projects interest you, I'm looking for help and collaboration. I'm low on time with a full-time job, being a husband, and a new dad. All the relevant links for this video are in the description below. Thanks for watching, and keep filling up those Pokedexes.